Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Osborne.
Today, a New York City probation officer asked Trump a series of questions ahead of his sentencing, and Trump actually agreed to join us right now to answer some of those same questions on the record. Let's speak to him right now. Mr. Trump, thank you for talking to us. You've been criminally convicted. Where do experts think that you should serve your sentence?
Prisons, insane asylums, and mental institutions.
Okay, all right, okay. Now you own several homes. If you get house arrest, which house would you like to stay in?
Waffle House.
Got it. You're also facing a prison sentence. Do you know anyone that has gone to prison?
All my friends.
Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. In prison, you might sleep in a bunk bed. What would the climb up to the top bunk be like for you?
Mount Everest.
Oh, that's interesting. Of course, some inmates get things by trading cigarettes, candy, or cash. What would you trade in prison?
Don Jr.
Okay, all right. All right, yeah.
And Eric.
All right, but you're going to throw in Eric, too. Okay, I understand. Look, a lot of inmates also spend time exercising. What would it be like for you to do some weightlifting in the yard? Okay, all right. Take it easy. Take it easy. Just so we have it, what size handcuffs do you wear?
Tiny little.
Last question. What do you think you'll be doing after one night behind bars?
Thumb in mouth saying, "Mommy, take me home, Mommy."
No, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
That was Jimmy Fallon. And you got to laugh. Because why, Jen, if you don't laugh?
You cry?
Exactly. Very excited for today's conversation with political consultant and television producer Mark McKinnon. We shall chat with Mark shortly. But first, thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please follow or subscribe and rate and review, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. All right, so before we get into things, I want to take a moment to suggest to you guys that you listen to my pal Anthony the Mooch Scaramucci's terrific podcast, Open Book. Each episode includes Anthony's unique, astute, and honest insights on today's political and business landscapes, as well as a compelling chat with a prominent guest author. You know, the Mooch, he's got a lot to say, and it's usually 100% spot on. You can find Open Book wherever you get your podcasts, so check it out. Open Book with Anthony Scaramucci. Another announcement. We're introducing a new segment today called Just Jeff. And who is Jeff, Jen?
Jeff Shear is my dad.
Jeff is Jen's dad. Jeff has a lot of opinions on a lot of things.
That he does.
And he's a big fan of the podcast.
It's so true.
Not often complimentary, sometimes critical. But that's all okay.
Well, that's how Jeff rolls.
Yeah, so we're introducing this segment where Jeff gets to give his opinion for a couple of minutes on a particular episode. Or me. Or you, Jen.
That's impossible.
All right, we'll get to Just Jeff later on in the episode, so stick around for that. Let's start off with our two big things, Donald Trump and the election. So today's his birthday. He is 78 years old, and since we're such big fans of Donald Trump in the back room, I thought it would be fitting that we sing him happy birthday. So let's get to it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. May you soon be in prison. Happy birthday to you. Woo! All right, that was awesome.
78 years young.
And he deserves every word of it.
Absolutely.
So robust.
78. He's a kid.
Look
Why
at
would
that.
you want an old man like Joe Biden when you can get a kid like Donald Trump?
And look at his hair.
Unbelievable. If you can stay focused on it, because it's like a bright orange. It's like the sun. Looking at Donald Trump's head is like staring into an eclipse.
It's true.
It can damage the eyes. Looking at that hair could actually damage your eyes. All right, so this was a week that had a very interesting thing happen. You know, Donald Trump is always talking about how the Department of Justice is being weaponized by Joe Biden and the Democrats against him, except this week in the Department of Justice's prosecution of Joe Biden's own son, Hunter, he was found guilty of all charges.
What would Republicans point to as a two-tiered system of justice when the president's son was just convicted of a crime? I mean, if anything, this shows the difference that Democrats are willing to accept when our justice system works as functioned and as designed. We're not here contesting the results. We're not here trying to defund the FBI or the Department of Justice because we don't like the outcome of a given trial. We respect the judicial process.
That was AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she's 100% right because there were no cries of rigged trial. There were no cries that the judge was conflicted or terrible, terrible judge. No cries of witch hunts and conspiracies. Just, you know what actually we heard? We heard President Joe Biden say he will not pardon his own son. And that's the difference. Joe Biden will not pardon his own son. Donald Trump has promised to pardon every single J6th rioter.
Well, have you looked at the right-wing media machine on the Hunter Biden decision? This is all obviously a deflection from all the bigger crimes that the Biden crime family are hiding.
Yeah, of course. This was all a big cover-up. Biden intentionally prosecuted his son just to be able to say to Trump, see, you're not the only one being prosecuted by the Department of Justice. He's willing to send his own son to prison because it'll be better for him in the fall, but it also provides for better cover.
So how can he be too old? I mean, look how clever he is.
Of course.
Well, clearly Joe Biden is a criminal mastermind.
Can you just tell me one bigger crime? I just need to know.
China.
Maddie, you know better than that. It's China. I mean, there's no bottom to the insanity of these people. But clearly, what this does is it takes the wind out of Donald Trump's sails. He's still going to say that he's being persecuted by a weaponized Department of Justice. It's never going to stop him from saying that. But again, and I'm going to say this 1,000 times between now and November 5th, for the 3, 4, 5% of the people we need to leave the Republican Party and vote for Joe Biden, that's who this is going to play to.
And to be damn sure, he will 100% weaponize the Department of Justice.
Absolutely. But again, if you have a half a brain and you truly are trying to figure out who you're going to vote for, at this point, it's like, no, this wasn't weaponization of the DOJ. His own son has been prosecuted. His own son may go to prison. His son is a criminal, and he's going to pay the price. And so are you, Donald Trump. Anyway, it's just an interesting contrast. Also, the same week, we saw another contrast. We saw Joe Biden in Europe meeting. First, he was at Normandy for the ceremonies there. And then he was in France with Macron, on the global stage, being a leader, representing the United States. And what was Trump doing? Acting like an insane lunatic, either in Vegas, or he had a crazy rally, or his shit posting from his gold-plated toilet in Mar-a-Lago, or when he went to the Capitol yesterday to get his ass kissed by the pathetic, vomitous sycophants that are still supporting him. And I think that contrast, that's what voters are going to be, the key voters are going to be looking at. What is Joe Biden actually doing? Not what Trump says or what his sycophants in the right-wing media are doing with their fake videos, where he's trying to make him look like he's frozen or staring off into space. So yesterday, he goes to the Capitol, the scene of the crime. The man who orchestrated the deadly insurrection is welcomed back into the Capitol with open arms by Mitch McConnell, Mike Johnson. They were like little children. They were so happy. Donald Trump praised me. I mean, did you see the clips of all of them, like, gushing about how Donald Trump complimented them and praised them? I mean, it was disgusting.
Basically, on January 6th, they were running for their lives, and now they're running for election, and they don't seem to remember January 6th.
Yeah. Well, I'll take it a step further. They're running to get to the head of the line to lick Donald Trump's ass. Josh Hawley was interviewed yesterday. It's like, dude, we saw you running for your life, right?
But they can't get elected unless they lick his ass. The base will not elect them. We saw what happened to Adam Kinzinger. We see what happens to anyone who steps out of line. They lose.
Sure. So during this meeting with Republican leadership, he praised, again, Hannibal Lecter as a great man, quote, great man, spoke of, quote, great romance with Nancy Pelosi in, quote, Another Life.
That's crazy.
He whined, Maddie, you're going to love this, he whined about Taylor Swift and wondered if she's going to endorse him. And then he called Milwaukee a horrible city. Now, Milwaukee, where is the Republican convention this year?
This is crazy. This whole thing is so crazy.
Yeah.
Milwaukee,
the location of the Republican convention, number one. Number two, I'm sorry, is there a swing state that begins with the letter W?
Yeah, well, Wisconsin, I'm going to bet right now that Biden does win Wisconsin.
This is what happens when you invite Donald Trump somewhere.
But his insane rants are said so robustly, and it's not what he's saying, it's how he's saying it that they care about.
So as expected, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel came out condemning Donald Trump, and also the Milwaukee mayor, Cavalier Johnson, said, quote, Donald Trump was talking about things that he thinks are horrible. All of us lived through his presidency. So right back at you, buddy.
good.
So Wisconsin is such a purple state, and I think he made a big blunder. I think you're right. I think this is going to cost him Wisconsin if Biden hadn't already had Wisconsin sealed up. There's 50,000 Republicans in Milwaukee. Biden won the state in 2020 by 20,000 votes. Think about that.
The only thing I'd say is anyone who is supporting Trump the day before he said Milwaukee is terrible is still going to support Trump.
But we don't need those people. We need the people who are just like, I voted for that guy in 2020. I said I'd vote for him again. He's making this fucking difficult for me, and I can't. Those are the people. There's a small group of them. But that's all we need. When an election is going to be 1%, 2%, 3%, won by that kind of a margin, we don't need 1 million Trump supporters. We just need a few people to go, that's it, I'm done. He's attacking my own fucking state now. I'm done. So a new Financial Times, University of Michigan poll shows Biden gaining with voters in his handling of the economy. Trump's lead over Biden shrunk from 11 points in February to 4 points in June. With 5 months to go, me like that statistic. Inflation cooled in May. No inflation for the first time in 2 years. Down to 3.3%. Gas prices are down. New car pricing down. Clothing pricing down. Airfare, wholesale prices overall dropped 2% in May. That was unexpected. You know, just wait till Fed Chairman Jay Powell starts lowering interest rates. All right, so I mentioned before, Donald Trump had this rally in Vegas.
Because of MIT, my relationship to MIT, very smart. He goes, I say, what would happen if the boat sank from its weight and you're in the boat and you have this tremendously powerful battery and the battery's now underwater and there's a shark that's approximately 10 yards over there. By the way, a lot of shark attacks lately. Do you notice that? A lot of shark. I watched some guys justifying it today. Well, they weren't really that angry. They bit off the young lady's leg because of the fact that they were not hungry, but they misunderstood who she was. These people are crazy. He said there's no problem with sharks. They just didn't really understand a young woman swimming now really got decimated, and other people too, a lot of shark attacks. So I said, so there's a shark 10 yards away from the boat, 10 yards, or here. Do I get electrocuted? If the boat is sinking, water goes over the battery, the boat is sinking. Do I stay on top of the boat and get electrocuted? Or do I jump over by the shark and not get electrocuted? Because I will tell you, he didn't know the answer. He said, you know, nobody's ever asked me that question. I said, I think it's a good question. I think there's a lot of electric current coming through that water. But you know what I'd do if there was a shark or you get electrocuted? I'll take electrocution every single time. I'm not getting near the shark. So
This would be the point where, like, the men in the white coats come and just like, sir, we have to get back. We have to get back home. Come with us, sir. We're serving dinner soon. We were having chocolate pudding. You love chocolate pudding. Oh, yeah, I like chocolate pudding. He's out of his fucking mind. Anybody who listens to that and goes, you know what? I want that guy because Joe Biden's mental acuity is suffering.
Exactly.
Like, you know what? Then your fucking mental acuity is suffering. What was he talking about? What was he talking about? Batteries and sharks and...
Have you ever been to... Have you ever been to like an improv where they have to use a line? And
Right.
That was
All right, so the audience, give us something. Give us a word. Sharks. Give us another word. Batteries. Give us another word. Electrocution. Okay. All right, guys, we ready? All right, let's go.
I actually think I know what he was trying to say, oddly enough.
Oh, really?
Please translate
Were
for
you
us.
drinking this morning?
No,
Are
no.
you on mushrooms right now?
I mean, not that what he was trying to say made any sense anyway, but he always seems to leave out about 6 words for every word that he says. So when he said his relationship to MIT, which is absurd, I believe he had an uncle who was a professor at MIT who left MIT in 1973. His name was John. And so he's referred to his uncle before. So I think he was trying to say batteries are bad and some sort of environmentalists and batteries and electric cars. This is an extension of his fear of windmills and other things. And so he then...
I'll take electrocution every time. Who wants to be electrocuted?
But
there's no
there's
coming
another
back from
part
that.
to this. We know from Stormy Daniels that he's obsessed with sharks. He made her watch shark shows when she came over. All this is him railing against libtards.
Maddie, you did a very noble job of trying to decipher and translate the untranslatable. That was so terrifying that the actual shark from Jaws would be like, hey, I'm not fucking with that guy. Keep him away from me, okay? You think I'm scary? That guy is fucking terrifying. Did you see the clips of the people?
The people behind him who didn't know what the fuck he was talking about.
Well, that's what I always watch. I always watch the people behind because they're always like, we like this guy, Marge? Oh, okay. But did you see the clips of the people leaving in droves?
Some people had to be taken out by ambulance because they had heat stroke. That's just true. It was 105 degrees or something.
But they were piling out, but you hear him in the background. He's still talking.
About the shark?
He was also yammering about teleprompters and stiffing vendors. He called the J6 rioters J6 warriors, which was actually a very interesting thing from a legal basis. Remember how he used to say they're loving people and they were nice to cops and this and that? Now he's calling them warriors. So he's actually acknowledging what they did that day. I don't think he realizes what he said. Of course, he went on and on about his grievances, but this was my favorite moment when he looked at the crowd and literally said to them, I don't care about you. Yeah. I only want your vote. Now, I'm no rocket scientist, but I'm going to go on a limb and say maybe that was the moment a lot of them got up and left. Because if it was me sitting there in the 110-degree heat and this motherfucker is telling me he doesn't care about me, he only wants my vote, adios, amigo.
Oh, there you go.
All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My winner, SCOTUS. The Supreme Court upholds broad access to key abortion pill, and you guys know the name. I don't need to say it.
Mifepristone.
Thanks, Andy. My loser, SCOTUS, dealt a fresh blow to firearm regulations by throwing out the federal ban on bump stocks, solidifying their view that women's freedom over their own bodies is definitely more dangerous to society than guns.
My winner is mass murderers, because SCOTUS has thrown out one of the few measures enacted to reduce mass killings when they completely ignored what they used to call original intent and struck down the ATF's ability to regulate bump stocks. My loser, the Republican members of Congress who gushed over Trump and completely whitewashed January 6th.
My winners, Donald Trump for being honest for the first time in his life, but telling his Las Vegas rally crowd that I don't care about you, I just want your vote. And the U.S. Supreme Court, which yesterday rejected a challenge to the abortion pill mifepristone, which will allow the widely used drug to remain on the market. My losers, the disgusting Hamas-supporting anti-Semitic assholes who vandalized the homes of Jewish board members of the Brooklyn Museum, who protested outside the Nova exhibition in Lower Manhattan, shouting anti-Semitic slurs, waving Hamas and Hezbollah flags, and shouting, "Long live October 7th," and who took over a New York City subway car yelling, "Raise your hand if you're a Zionist." This is your chance to get out. Time for the rant. And I think this week I want to speak to the MAGA crowd. You know, you guys who've pledged undying loyalty to a democracy-raping dictator-wannabe sociopath who doesn't give a flying fuck about you. And you know how I know that? Because he just said it out loud at his Las Vegas rally last weekend. He literally looked out into the crowd and said, and I quote, "I don't care about you. I just want your vote." Well, I'm old enough to remember if a politician ever said, "I don't care about you," you'd tell him to fuck off and you'd vote for somebody else. especially if you spend 9 years worshiping him and thinking that he actually cares about you. So I ask you, why on earth would you ever vote for someone who literally looks at you and says, I don't care about you? Wake up, Trumpers. You have been shamelessly scammed, shammed, and lied to, relentlessly used and abused, ever since that orange maniac descended the escalator in 2015. He has done nothing for you. He will do nothing for you. And he doesn't care about you because he just said it. Believe him and vote for someone who actually does care about you and who doesn't tell you 24/7 how awful he's being treated and that it's all about him. Vote for the guy whose financial, tax, healthcare, prescription drug, education, housing, and other policies actually help you. Vote for Joe Biden in November, not the guy who actually thinks so little of you, who has so little respect for you, that he can, without any shame, guilt, or concern, literally look right at you and tell you that he doesn't care about you. Remember that when you vote in November. All right, let's get to Mark McKinnon. He's a political advisor, reform advocate, columnist, and television producer. He was the creator and co-host of Showtime's Emmy-nominated hit documentary series, The Circus. He's worked for many causes, companies, and candidates, including President George W. Bush, Senator John McCain, late Governor Ann Richards, and Bono. He was the chief media advisor for 5 winning presidential primary and general election campaigns. Dedicated to bipartisanship, McKinnon helped start No Labels. He's been a regular columnist for the Daily Beast, the London Daily Telegraph, and Vanity Fair, and was a consultant to the HBO show The Newsroom and Netflix's House of Cards. Mark, welcome into the back room.
Glad to be aboard. Thanks for putting me on the dance card.
Yeah, I've been wanting to chat with you for a long time. I'm a big fan. I want to start off by just saying The Circus, to me, was the best show on TV. I think I might have even tweeted that once or twice. And any chance of that show coming back ever, somewhere?
Yeah, it's a little complicated. I know you're familiar with the industry. I mean, it's just a train wreck right now. And I mean, first of all, it took me 13 years to pitch that show to get it on.
Wow.
And, 100 meetings, and it was the 100th one where I finally got a yes. And then, it was supposed to only be one season, and it was, it was supposed to be about the campaign, one and done, maybe come back 4 years later. And then the Trump shit show started happening. The circus hadn't stopped, keep going, and we did. And then it became the highest rated, most watched show in the history of Showtime. So you'd think they'd want to continue this for the kind of the last chapter of this particular time capsule, but Showtime's gone. It's out of business now, and it's been, subsumed by Paramount. Paramount's trying to sell their company, and so everybody in charge there is just trying to cut budgets to drive up the stock price. So there's really no interest there, and there's the agents and managers and everybody have been trying to see if there's another place where it might land. Just given the interest and stakes of this election. But I discovered now just how good we had it, because, I mean, every episode of The Circus was roughly $800,000. And I'm involved in another feature doc thing now, and I showed up the first day, and there was one guy with a bad camera. I'm like, where is everybody? And they're like, this is it, boss. So that's kind of the reality. I mean, the circus looked good because Showtime really invested in it. We had, big crews, big cameras, best equipment, best shooters in the country. And that's why it looked so good. But the days of producing that kind of stuff is maybe gone, unfortunately.
I was always jealous of those meals you guys had. It was like,
that's a funny part of it, Andy, because that was a total accident. The first week we said, well, we have to kind of set up the show, and we didn't want to do it in some sterile studio sitting at desk. And we said, well, let's just go find some place fun to eat. And that's when I discovered just, what a cultural magnet food and booze is for people. People used to watch our show just to see where we eat.
Especially for Heilman.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, John's a big foodie. And, of course, Alex was, too. I don't know if you know this, but her husband was Obama's chef.
Oh, no, I did not know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
so she was a big foodie, too. By the way, just as a footnote, huge fan of the Waitress.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm a Broadway fanatic and saw it on Broadway, and a huge Sarah Bareilles fan. And I think, I mean, I'm a huge musical nut. I think I've seen, 19 of the 20 musicals on Broadway. The only surprise is that I'm not gay. I went and saw Frozen by myself.
Wow. Let him
I'm
go.
lucky I didn't get
Let him
arrested.
go. Let Mark go. Well, I appreciate that. The story is so incredible. It was an amazing movie. It became a terrific smash record-setting musical on Broadway. And I'm actually working as an executive producer of a TV show that's in development
Fantastic.
based on Waitress. I'm working with
Well, good luck. It's
Searchlight
a great
Studio.
story, and
Yeah. And if you have a chance, check out, I don't know if you've seen the documentary that I directed called Adrian. It's based on...
I will for sure.
my
I will
late
for
wife.
sure. I saw the trailer for it. It looks
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, and it
Sorry
sort of
for
brings the
your
whole
loss.
story of Waitress and her career and all that together. Yeah, I appreciate that. So I want to ask you a macro question to start. The GOP, the Republican Party, went from the party of law and order to the party of a convicted felon and insurrection. It went from the party of faith and family values to the party that worships a serial sinner. And it went from the party of democracy and national security to the party that enables Putin and a fascist dictator wannabe. So my question is, Mark, what the hell happened to the Republican Party?
Boy, that's the $1 million question. And, I think we'll be talking about it, studying this for, forever. It is a complete, hostile takeover of the party. It doesn't look anything like the party of compassionate conservatism and George W. Bush and John McCain, or even Ronald Reagan. And I think a lot of it is cultural. I think we also, there's 1,000 answers, and maybe there's one too, which is, and sometimes it's Occam's razor, which is the simplest answer is the right one. Which is just to say, I've worked in campaigns all my life, and the winning campaigns were always about which candidate best embraced the future. And a really good example of that was 1996 when Bob Dole was the Republican nominee. And he got up in his convention speech and he really looked backwards. He talked about a time when he was growing up in Kansas and the neighborhoods were safe and you could leave the front door unlocked and the keys in your car. And the Clinton campaign very smartly jumped on that and just said, great, we're going to make this about the future. He can make it about the past. We'll embrace the future. And then Clinton famously did his convention speech where he said, I'm going to build a bridge to the 21st century, and said it 23 times in 45 minutes. And got the headlines that they wanted, which was, I'm going to build a bridge to the Clinton going to build a bridge to the 21st century. And of course they won that election. And so you can kind of go election after election and look at that. And Obama is one of the best examples of that, of embracing the future. And what Trump did was came along at a hinge point in history, where, first of all, he copyrighted the phrase "Make America Great Again." He's not the first one who ever said it, but he's maybe the first one to understand its potential resonance by copywriting it. And that phrase means different things to different people. But overall, what it means and what it meant in 2016 to a lot of people was, hey, the future's kind of scary. Let's just stop all this forward progress and let's go backwards. And that's what Trump said. He said, listen, we're going to get manufacturing back. We're going to stop all this, all these new people coming in and all this stuff that scares you about the future. I'm going to cancel it, and we're going to take a step back. And I think that was a huge appeal for Trump, and I think continues to be.
I'm sensing that you're being a little diplomatic, so I'm going to translate for you. Because to me, "Make America Great Again" really means make America white again, make America heterosexual again, make America male-dominated again, make America English-speaking again, blah, blah, blah.
When I say go backwards, I mean literally backwards, back to the 50s, back where women had less rights, back where there were less voting rights. He says all those things. Yes, 100%. I had a conversation with John Bolton that was a huge light bulb for me, where I was sort of naively saying, well, God, isn't the arc of history like forward moving? Doesn't it just keep moving forward? He's like, Mark, very quaint of you, but no, it's not. There is no arc to history. that is a continual path forward, and they're we go backwards all the time, and maybe especially now, but it's shocking to me. I mean, I just thought that these sort of rights that were established and those sort of things were things that were, could not be dialed back, and here we are.
Mm-hmm. We had Frank Bruni on a few days ago, and he has a
Big
new
fan
book.
of Frank?
Yep, new book called The Age of Grievance. It just seems like a lot of Republicans, the electorate, they're just angry. Like, what are they so angry about?
Yeah, it is. It's all about grievance and victimhood, and just, and Trump's all about vengeance. And again, I think that goes a little bit back to what I'm talking about, that hinge of history, where a lot of people want to blame somebody else for whatever their lot in life is, that they're not making enough money, they don't have the home that they want, whatever it might be. It's a whole lot easier to blame somebody else than to say I'm responsible for my own situation in life. It's, blame it on immigrants, blame it on the Democrats, blame it on Biden, however you want. But that's just a whole lot easier for them to live with than to say, well, maybe I fucked up. Maybe I should have gone to college or gotten a degree or whatever.
Right.
It's just say, fuck them. It was, it's the Democrats' fault.
Mm-hmm. Every election, basically, since 2016 has been the most important critical election of our lifetime. This one coming up actually really does feel like the most important critical election of our lifetime. How nervous, how scared are you about November?
I'm nauseous. Almost in a constant state of nausea. Yeah, listen, it's a great point, because having done campaigns professionally, I can tell you every 4 years we said the same thing. It's the most important election. It's the most important election. You're always trying to raise the stakes.
Right.
But, I think there's ample evidence to suggest that this one really is. And all you have to do is look back at January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, this is a footnote to that. One of the more interesting interviews, or one of my favorite interviews, was with we did our shows with Mitt Romney one time, and I was in his office, and there was a long vertical map on the wall, and I kept looking at it. He said, let's go over, and we said, come here, I want to show you this. And we talked about this map, and as I said, it's a long vertical, maybe 4 or 5 feet long, and it's a colored map that's just got colored lines going down it, and the colors represent civilizations and governments and cultures throughout history, and when they came in, when they went out, when they came back in, if they came back in, that sort of thing. And there was only one through line, and that was China. That sort of starts at the beginning, goes all the way through. Mm-hmm. And at the very bottom left-hand corner, about a quarter of an inch, was American democracy. And it just really gives you a sense of how young and how maybe fragile this experiment is. Mm-hmm. In the scope of history, this is a very new thing, which again shows you how, we learned on January 6th just how fragile it could be. And so I say it's existential because, there's a guy who's running for the White House who says the quiet stuff out loud. He's not hiding the ball. Pretty clear what he wants to do. And last time around, he didn't really know what he was doing, and he had a bunch of, well, listen, if you wanted to work in the 2016 presidential race and you're a Republican operative, Donald Trump was the 18th interview you did. You went to Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, Chris Christie. Nobody thought Trump could win, including Trump. Mm-hmm. This time around, it's much different. He's surrounded by people who are a lot smarter, a lot more experienced, and Trump, his bottom line is that he doesn't want anybody that's going to buck him or question him. And he put a fire hose to the guardrails of democracy last time, and believe me, he's just going to firebomb them to hell next time. He said as much, so I don't know why anybody should be surprised.
Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest differences this time is that he's not going to fill his cabinet with Mattis's and Kellys and those guys. It's going to be Kash Patel and God knows who else.
Yeah, imagine who the Attorney General is going to.
Sure.
And his first order is going to be, go get Biden, go get Biden family, go get Andy, Ostrom, get the whole blood.
I've already got my nail file set tucked away.
Yeah,
from
no,
when I'm
I
locked
just sent
up.
a note to Steve Bannon saying, please give me a blindfold and a cigarette.
Okay, let me ask you to put your optimistic hat on. Do you think we're going to be in that place rather than, I'm not going to say this is going to be a cakewalk for Biden, but polls are often wrong. They've been wrong as shit the last several years. When push comes to shove and people realize there's two dishes on the menu, whether it's in the black community, Gen Z, suburban moms, are they going to end up doing the same thing they did in 2020?
I hope so, and I'm clinging to hope, but hope is not a strategy. And the challenge is that when you look at everything, and yeah, sure, polls are wrong, but geez, you stack it all up. And the reality is that it's such a confounding thing that in the greatest democracy in the world, we have two 80-year-olds running for president. I mean, you cannot be 66 years old in the United States of America and be a park ranger, but you can run for president. And I listen, I voted for Biden. I'm going to vote for him again, but I think it was a huge mistake that he ran again. Mm-hmm. He said that he was going to be a transitional president, and he should have been. He could have preserved his legacy, handed off. There's a ton of Democratic challengers, any one of whom would be beating Trump by double digits. Mm-hmm. So I start with that. Listen, there's, if just as a sort of strategist, you look at it, you say, okay, there's like 10 ways Trump wins right now. There's one way that Biden wins. And, hopefully he'll put the inside straight together and it'll work. Mm-hmm. But I wish there were more options. But to your point, I'm a prisoner of hope, man. And, I'm going to suit up and do everything I can. And like I said, I wish there were other options, but there's not. And that's just the way it is. And you're left, as you said, these are two pretty stark choices. And hopefully those with, particularly the most skin in the game will recognize that. For example, you mentioned younger voters. So I'm right now embarking on a documentary, a feature project, a documentary film on the election that's going to be solely focused on Gen Z.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And that's a fascinating cohort. I mean, they're really interesting, and they're widely misunderstood. They are not conventional at all, and they could be a determinative factor. It's 40 million voters. It's like 20% of the electorate if they vote, and
right.
That's a big if.
Well, in the last election, I think the percentage of people under 30 was 30%.
Yeah, and so I went to as part of filming this, I went and shot a campus demonstration not long ago. And these are very passionate people. They've stood in the rain for like 2+ hours, and nobody left. And I talked to a bunch of them, and they were like, "Fuck Biden, fuck Trump." I'm like, "Well, what are you going to do?" And they said, "Well, we're either third party, Bobby Kennedy, one of the other choices, or not vote." But that's, to your point, it's like, really, given these stakes and given the real choices that you have. So, I think like you do, that before November, they're going to sit down and look at this and say, now, wait a minute. Are we really going to dial back rights and dial back all these things that I think that this generation would not like to lose and would like to see enhanced, and that minds will be changed?
Well, let me ask you a question on what you just said. If 30% of people under 30 voted, that means 70% didn't. I'm no Einstein, but I could do that math. The people that you've talked to, the young people that you've talked to that said what they said to you, are those people who voted in the last election, or are they just part of that 70%, who are like, whatever, if I get up and it's raining, I'm not going, or if I'm hungover?
Actually, a lot of these weren't, because these were like 19, 20-year-olds that I was talking to. But I'm going to do a much deeper dive, and I'll find out, and I'll report back.
Because I think that's the key. If Biden can just get the young people he got last time, so then the question is, well, what would have moved the needle away from him among this group in the last 4 years? Certainly the situation in Israel and Gaza, some people believe is an issue, but if you look at, the surveys that have been out, it's like number 15 on a list of 16 things that
and also, on that issue, what do you think Trump would do? He'd firebomb the whole place, and,
of course. And forget what he would do here in this country, which is a whole other subject, but it's like you're talking bans and mass deportations and camps and registrations. So I'm hoping that people not just Gen Z, but the people who voted for Biden in 2020, I can't see why they would leave Biden. In order for Trump to win this time, his base has to grow, Biden's has to shrink. And we're kind of seeing that the opposite has occurred, right? So that's where I get optimistic.
Yeah, I agree. When you kind of weigh it all out, and part of it is, this huge partisanship in the echo chambers, what people are hearing. 50% of the country think this is like the worst economy in history. And it's, one of the best.
One of the best.
So,
it's crazy.
But it's just.
What do you think that is? I'm curious what you think that is. Because some of those people will even say, my own economy is great, my state economy is great, but the country sucks, which makes zero sense, especially when you look at the metrics.
It's a couple of things. One is that they don't ever hear the truth. They're hearing a distorted version of it from their own confirmation bias news sources. The other thing is that the partisanship edges have gotten so sharp that people just believe whatever they want to. They just believe whatever is best for their team.
Right.
And if believing that the economy is bad is good for Trump, and they'll just believe it. It's just just make themselves believe something that isn't true. Mm-hmm. I mean, gas prices are a good example. I was getting gas the other day. I was like, this is about the same as it was 10 years ago. It's not that inflated, for God's sake. It's not like gas is $20 a gallon. It's like $3.20.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah. Well, inflation, which is what everybody talks about, it's now at 3.3%.
Yeah, it's not crazy. Now, listen, I know that you can always find our own prices, this, X that, but you just weigh it all out, and I think historically, unfortunately, it'll take history to provide the proper lens, but it hasn't been that bad of 4 years, and a lot of things have been pretty good.
Mm-hmm. An unbelievable thing is happening on Capitol Hill today. Donald Trump has returned to the scene of the crime, literally going to the Capitol, speaking to his sycophants who continue to pledge undying fealty to him, despite everything, despite the fact that he's pretty much cost them every single election in the last 6, 7, 8 years. What do you make of that? Why are they still licking the ass?
It's just pure power. They think he's going to be the next president, and that's it. And so they don't care. They throw their principles out the window. What's bothered me most is about the Trump era is not so much Trump, but other, the other people who have bent the knee almost across the board with, some, rare exceptions like Liz Cheney. After Trump has publicly humiliated him. Go down the list, Marco Rubio, just go down all of it. And, and he's up there in Capitol Hill asking, the speaker to somehow, fix his conviction by the courts of these so-called, the partisan judiciary, the partisan judiciary of Joe Biden that just convicted his son.
Right. Well, that's all just a cover. Biden is so shrewd.
I love that. Stephen Miller came out and said, oh, wait a minute, this is all just a distraction because they don't want to take him down for being a foreign agent.
Right.
I was like, Christ. Never stop.
What do you make about, Donald Trump is a pathological liar. Last weekend in Las Vegas, I think he told the truth for the first time. And he looked at his crowd and he said, I don't care about you. I just want your vote. How crazy is that?
It doesn't get any crazier than that. This whole thing, and if I had pitched what's happened to Showtime as a scripted fictional show, they would have thrown me out. This is ridiculous. No way any of that could happen. And here we are.
Mm-hmm. We have Trump, and then we have Trumpism. Trump, he's 78, 79 years old. Like, eventually he will, disappear. But Trumpism is going to be around for a long time, isn't it?
Likely, yeah. They're going to want to replicate it. And by the way, if you're worried about Trump himself and you don't think you're worried enough, just go listen to a Steve Bannon podcast. Because Bannon basically says, oh, Trump's just the beginning. Trump's nothing. And Trump's, he basically kind of dismisses Trump as being kind of wait till you see what we got coming. If you think Trump's an issue, just wait to what's coming around the bend. And this is long range, and Bannon, whatever you think of him, is a pretty smart guy, unfortunately. And he's got plans well beyond Trump.
Mm-hmm. How much of those plans involve somebody else named Trump Jr.?
Well, I just saw some stories on this yesterday. Maybe you did too. That sort of increasing. I sort of dismissed that early on. I mean, I actually did the very first Donald Trump interview that he ever did. It was in Elko, Nevada. He was out there talking. This is early 2016. But the stories I was reading yesterday is about Donald Trump Jr., how deeply he's inserted himself into the endorsements of the Senate candidates and just kind of the machinery of the Trump apparatus, and that increasingly is kind of building his brand to be, the obvious inheritor of that Trump brand and to take it to the next level.
I have this theory that he's going to be the vice presidential running mate.
Oh, now that's one I hadn't heard.
Wouldn't that just be totally on
faster? I mean,
that's totally on brand, right? Who would be more loyal than Junior?
I don't think it's a constitutional problem.
No, and when you consider that he already had Ivanka and Jared in the White House, he already put Lara Trump in charge of the RNC. Why would anyone look at me and say, Ostroy, you're crazy if you think he'd make Junior his vice president?
That's not bad. I might have to write a column on that. I don't even meant to steal that.
Just give me a little credit for that. That's all.
I will. I always do.
I don't ask for much. I don't need much. All right, let's talk about VeepStakes.
So they'll send you to the gulag first.
Actually, I did write something about this like a week ago.
It's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Very good idea.
Who do you think will be his running mate?
In Trump world and standards, I'm so conventional. I mean, I wanted W to pick McCain to be his running mate. And, I mean, like Karl Rove does his column and says, it's got to be somebody that you think can be the president. Well, yeah, but why not also somebody who can add a few votes in November, which is, the conventional strategic way that I'd look at it, being a shallow media guy. And that choice seems obvious as hell. I mean, pick Nikki Haley, for God's sake. I mean, you're leaving 20% of the vote out there across the country for a woman who's technically not even on the ballot.
Right.
She's still getting 20% of the vote.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with those votes? You could,
that was my next question to you.
Pick up some of them if you put her on the ballot. And, I mean, the question is, would he do it and would she accept? Everybody accepts. It's bullshit to say, and, and I don't care what the history is. At the end of the day, if you get asked to be vice president, there's one exception to that I can't really talk about. But knowing the Nikki Haley history of sort of flip-flopping all over the place, I think she'd take it in a heartbeat. The question is, would Trump do it? I mean, Bannon and the MAGites hate her. So, but again, where are they going to go?
Right.
Where are they going to? And so I think it'd be the smart thing to do. But, it appears that the kind of final list is down to Doug Burgum, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio. I'm missing somebody, but it's down to like 4 or 5, including Tim Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tim Scott.
History has shown us that whatever the smartest move for Trump is, he's going to do the that's opposite.
Yeah. So that's ridiculous.
That's why I say Junior. I'm telling you, people are going to come to me in a few weeks. And they're going to be like, Ostroy, I don't know how you did it, but you're spot on.
You're going to be very famous. And the great thing about predictions like this is that if it doesn't happen, nobody's going to remember. If it happens, you're going to be so fucking famous.
I got nothing. It's like going on the racetrack and picking the 100-to-1 shot, right? Except here, the 100-to-1 shot is actually more like a 3-to-1 shot or a 2-to-1 shot. Might even be even money in my mind.
Yeah, maybe much more obvious than.
What about Bobby Kennedy Jr.? What's his impact going to be on this?
Well, again, I go to my strategist hat because Mark McKinnon, small d, democratic citizen of the world, thinks that, again, in the greatest democracy in the world, we should have more than one choice. It should not be Coke or Pepsi. We should have Mountain Dew or Red Bull as options. But if I'm on Team Biden or Team Trump, I recognize this is going to probably come down to, or could down to 3 states and thousands of votes. And that you look at the last couple of elections, and in both cases, you can argue that the third-party candidate swung the election. They had, 1 to 3% in all those elections, and the election was won or lost by less than that. So I think he's a big problem and a big threat to interestingly, both campaigns, he's such an enigma that people can't figure out who he hurts more. Look at who's attacking him. First it was Biden, then it was Trump. And, he kind of gets the anti-vaxxers on the right, and he gets the kind of the radical environmentalists on the left, or the Gaza people, or whatever it might be, that are unhappy with Biden. And so right now, you can make pretty good cases that he hurts both of them, or either one. But the point is that he's a guy with a ton of baggage who's getting 15% of the vote right now. Now, I don't think he's going to sustain that, but in this election, 4% will be a problem. So I think the smartest thing the Biden campaign has done, this whole campaign, was to take the strategic reins of the debate issue, and which was really smart, because they had three options. One was don't debate, which is not an option given where they are. The other option was to do the very conventional thing, which is to just wait till September and have Trump beat on you for 3 months about how anytime, anywhere, any place.
Right.
And then you finally called in September, and it's on his terms. And by doing it this way, you have the advantage of asserting yourself, looking stronger, looking more confident. And that's Biden's biggest problem, is his perception of weakness. So. And by the way, it's the most important asset any presidential candidate has or doesn't have, which is the perception of strength. So it helps in that regard to just say, hey, I'm so confident, I'm not only going to debate, I'm going to debate him in June. And he got to pick the platforms and the rules. So all super smart. Now, but it's a very high risk strategy too. And the risk is he could get crushed by Donald Trump in this first debate. And it could be like game over.
Do you think it'll even take place?
Well, if I were Trump, I'd try and get out of it.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, I can't see that guy actually showing up.
No, there's much more downside for Trump, really. And they, like I said, he's got smart people around. They're going to figure this out. And they can you can imagine him finding some ridiculous reason that would be a perfect rationale for MAGA people. They're like, they're going to cut off his mic. Fuck him.
That's where my money is, if I'm making another bet.
But I'll also say that, again, this is like ridiculous three-dimensional chess moves and the probability of being, 0.1, or 0.0001. I don't do math either. But I know this is not Biden's, was not their intent, but because it's happening in June, it is happening early enough so that if, for heaven's sake, if Biden does have like a senior moment and freezes and completely melts down, then you could see what's plan B for the convention at that point? Everybody would freak out and say, well, fuck.
Is there a similar scenario with Republicans where they go to the convention and go, seriously, we want to go to November with this dude?
Yeah, potentially. Because I would just say, again, I don't think it's just Trump derangement syndrome that there seems to me increasing evidence almost every public appearance of Trump's now that he's just got less and less control of his value. He's just saying crazier and crazier shit all the time, and that he could have the meltdown. Yes, but boy, I'm not, like given what you said, you've cited a couple of examples already, but MAGA people would probably think that it was like a fake thing, that it wasn't really Trump on stage. They would find some excuse.
I've seen interviews with MAGAs that they say Biden's not real; he's a double. But you're right. It would be a very interesting narrative if Republicans decided by was it Milwaukee this year, the convention?
Yeah. By the way, Trump just pissed all over Milwaukee this morning. He said it's a shit city.
That's totally on brand for him. And so what if Republicans just said, you know what, he fucked up at the debate, he's babbling, he's talking about batteries and electrocution and sharks and God knows what, we are going to lose. We got to get rid of him. First vote, get rid of him, put Nikki Haley in, done, end of story. Is in this crazy, unconventional world that we've been living in with him for the last 9 years, is that crazy?
I don't think anything's crazy. I mean, just again, through 8 seasons of producing the Circus, just when I thought nothing crazier could happen, something crazier happened.
Right.
So, yes, I think anything's possible.
All right. Well, I got 2 light questions for you real quick before before you go.
I like light.
Yeah, light is always good in the darkness. So the first one is the hats. Give me the how, when, why. Where'd that come from? Because that's your signature look, and it's a good look. But where did it come from?
Well, thank you. Well, I say it's definitely an affectation. It's just not a recent one. There's not a picture of me growing up I don't have a hat on. Literally, I've been the cat in the hat from the cradle. And there's also a picture of me with my dad when I'm about 2 with this exact hat on. It's an open road Stetson, which is the classic kind of gentleman's hat. They also call it the president's hat. LBJ wore one, Truman
That's
wore
true.
one.
Yeah, I remember that hat.
They call it the president's hat. It's just a little more formal. It's got a smaller brim. So I've always worn a hat, and so and it's become just it has a practical value. Just like if you're trying to get a ride at the airport, it's just like I'm the guy in the hat, and it's worked out pretty well. But it is a little embarrassing because people ask me, and I won't answer how many hats I actually have. I just say more than Imelda has shoes.
Okay, that's fair enough. It's interesting as a Jew who loves the Rocky franchise. I remember, I don't know whether it was like Rocky 3 or Rocky 4, where Mick dies and there's this funeral and it's a Jewish funeral. And I was like, what? Mick's a Jew? So I'm wondering, like, if you take that hat off, is there a yarmulke under there?
Well, that's a funny question.
Are you hiding something?
The answer is no yarmulke, but a full head of hair.
Look at that.
That's the other thing is people just assume that I'm bald.
That was going to be my next question.
Oh, when I do take my hat off, they go, oh, shit, you have hair. So you weren't like just hiding something.
That's awesome. All right, my next question is a window into the soul question. What better way to get a window into someone's soul than music? Tell me your top 5 musical artists of all time.
Ooh, all time. Wow. Beatles for sure, because I mean, I remember being 8 years old and cleaning their basement, and my mom said, I'll give you 50 cents or you could have this Meet the Beatles album. And it changed my life. I mean, I played I Want to Hold Your Hand. I'd pick up the needle, pull it back, pick up the needle, pull it back, like 1,000 times. And that's when I decided I was gonna dedicate the rest of my life to music, which I did for the next 20 years or so. I mean, I lived in Nashville. I worked as a songwriter, not a very good one. Lived with Chris Christopherson for 3 years.
Wow.
So I got to put Chris on the list just because he was such a mentor and friend of mine. As just one of the great all-time songwriters of all time.
You should tell us that Bobby McGee is actually written about you.
Well, I wish I could say that, but it's actually written about Janis Joplin.
Yeah, I know.
Who he went and rescued from Mexico, and of course she covered it.
Yep.
Made it famous. Jackson Browne was really big. Saturate Before Using, and that was another one that was like such an inspiration to me at the time. So those are kind of big 3 inspirations. I'm a big Americana guy. I love Avett Brothers and Jason Isbell. That's just kind of my jam. Well, let me ask you this: who's your favorite songwriters in Americana? Are you an Americana guy?
No, I'm a big Beatles guy, so I'm going to say Lennon McCartney. That's my number 1.
Yeah, I mean, there's Lennon McCartney, and there's not a close second.
No,
really.
I've always said that. I say there's the Beatles, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah.
But when I ask this question, and I ask it a lot to people when they're on, I rarely get the Beatles. It's crazy. I
think that's because they're so above it all. It's just like,
I'm getting like Justin Bieber and Wham. Like, seriously, Wham.
But who's the inspiration for all those people? The Beatles.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
It all starts with the Beatles.
Mark, this was a lot of fun. I'm glad you finally made it into the back room. I hope you'll come back again.
Would love to. Thanks for having me. Keep kicking it hard. And as my fellow prisoner of hope, keep the candle burning.
Yep. Take care.
All right. Bye.
All right. It's time for our new segment, Just Jeff. As we said before, Jeff is Jen's dad, and he's very opinionated. He's got a lot to say, and we want to hear it. You just want to hear it in a very short amount of time. So that'll be the challenge.
Buckle up, buttercups. This is going to be lit.
All right. Let's get to Jeff. Just Jeff. Jeff, welcome to Just Jeff.
Thank you. I am so delighted that you started this thing because some of my friends said I have a voice that I should have been in radio. And I said, when I'm reincarnated, that is my plan. I definitely want to work in radio.
You're a fan of the podcast.
I definitely am.
So, since this is our first Just Jeff segment, can you give us just a little snippet of what was Jen like growing up?
Jen was great. She was very easy. She wasn't a discipline problem. She loved being assistant mother. She's 5 years older than her brother. She loved being a second mother, let's put it like that. And David, her brother, loved it. He loved having her help being a mother.
So what do you think of the podcast? Do you have like a favorite episode that comes to mind?
No, I think most of it's really good, and some of the people I'm not familiar with, and some of them I am. And I like the way you get people to open up about themselves. And very honestly, I wasn't impressed initially about your 5 favorite musical performers, because I'm not that into popular music myself. But the more I listen and the more I hear them reflect, I think it was really, and one of them recently asked you what your 5 favorite was. I don't know if anyone had done that before, but I think that's a very keen way of getting people to react.
What are your top 5?
I'm really not into pop music. I would say, folk singers.
You can go. Feel free to go back centuries. Beethoven, Bach.
Yeah, I like them. One of my favorite albums was Baroque and on the Street, the best hits of 1619. Yeah, I really like that.
Well, you're pretty current there, Jeff.
Can I answer for you, Dad?
Go ahead.
Okay. So you love Baroque music, Pepe Romero.
That was a long time ago. Yeah.
Spanish guitar music, Barry Manilow.
I like Barry Manilow. I know
Who
that
doesn't
puts
like
me
Barry
in.
Manilow?
Crystal Gale.
Yep.
And
Don't you make my brown eyes?
Oh, and Mana La Mancha.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That is.
No, not Mana La Mancha.
That's probably the most
I know
eclectic
someone
list
that-
we've ever had.
I know someone who that doesn't like Manilow because he's only into hard rock, and Barry Manilow's too soft. So whatever.
All right.
I would add music from because this is the 80th anniversary. Music from Rodgers and Hammerstein. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Well, Jeff, it's safe to say we're all looking forward to your wit and wisdom every week. Continue listening. Tell us what you like, you don't like, and we're going to leave on the fact that Barry Manilow is too soft. We're making news today. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you. I'll see what I can do for next time. This will be like once a week, like next week, the same time.
We'll see how it goes. It's all up to you, Jeff.
If you want to not have a second week, that's okay with me.
You did a really good job.
Yes,
There's
you're
no
excellent.
reason to be nervous.
We'll see you next
when
week.
I got the lead. When question and answer, it's a different story. If I have to come up with something myself, it's a different ballgame. I will see what I can do.
We'll talk to you next time.
Have a good weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, Jeff. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.